The shout tore through the morning silence like a cracking glass. I said, "Back off, you hear me? I ain't begging you again." Heads turned. Visitors froze mid-step. Even the crows perched on the cemetery wall seemed to pause, black wings half spread as if the outburst offended the air itself. Near the tomb of the unknown soldier, one of the most solemn places in the nation, a ragged man stumbled backward, fury twisting his face. Across from him, motionless and carved in discipline, stood a tomb guard, his white gloves still, his jaw locked, his eyes fixed straight ahead. Nothing moved except tension, rising like a storm. The morning had begun like any other at Arlington. Pale sunlight filtered through the winter haze, turning the acres of white marble headstones into rows of ghosts standing at attention. The air carried the faint crispness of frost that hadn't quite surrendered to the sun, and every sound, every footstep, every breath felt amplified in the sacred stillness. Arlington had always been a place where the living walked softly and the dead rested with dignity. Sergeant Michael Avery had completed his first hour of silent watch, the ceremonial rifle balanced perfectly in his hands, his movements controlled with the precision drilled into him through thousands of hours of training. Tomb guards weren't born, they were carved with patience, devotion, and an unwavering respect for the unknown heroes beneath the marble. He did not blink often, he did not shift unless commanded. He stood as a symbol, not a man. At least, that was the illusion the world believed. But beneath the immaculate uniform and the rigid discipline lived a man with joints that sometimes ached in the cold, with memories that crept in when the world grew too quiet, with scars unseen and otherwise that he did not share with anyone. To most visitors, he was little more than a statue in motion. No one noticed the quiet story in his eyes. Today, someone did. The first time Avery saw the homeless man, he was shuffling near the walkway, layered in three mismatched coats and a knitted hat that sagged over one eye. His beard was tangled, his hands red from the cold, his shoes splitting at the seams. He looked tired. Not the everyday tired of commuters or parents or tourists, but the deep, hollow exhaustion of someone who had held on too long by fingernails worn to the quick. Most people ignored him. A few looked disgusted. One tourist took a picture. Avery saw something else, something familiar, a shadow he recognized. But recognition was not a luxury tomb guards could acknowledge. Duty came first. Emotion stayed locked behind the marble of his posture. The man drifted closer, rubbing his hands together, breathing hard through chapped lips. He stopped at the rope line, separating visitors from the ceremonial path. A couple nearby stepped away. A security officer eyed him from a distance, waiting for trouble. The homeless man's gaze landed on Avery. "Hey," he muttered, "soldier boy, you got $1? Just need something warm, coffee, anything." Avery did not respond. He wasn't allowed to. Discipline required silence, but the man didn't understand military protocol, ceremonial restrictions, or the boundaries between duty and compassion. To him, silence looked like judgment. "Hey," his voice rose, "you hear me? I'm talking to you." A pair of school children turned around. Their teacher hushed them, whispering sharply about respect. But the whisper wasn't quite enough to hide her fear. Avery's heart tightened. He didn't move, not yet, but something in his chest shifted, a flicker of old hurt, scratching against the edges of memory. The homeless man stepped closer to the rope. "You ain't too good to look at me, are you? Are you just standing there like I ain't even alive?" Avery continued his precise pacing. 21 steps, pause, turn, 21 steps. Yet the man's words clung to him like wet fabric. Every syllable carried bitterness, sharpened by hunger and humiliation. When Avery turned at the end of his walk, he finally faced the man head on, not with defiance, not with anger, but with a stillness deeper than silence. The homeless man felt it instantly. That silence wasn't rejection. It was something heavier, older, a weight he couldn't name. "Man," the stranger muttered, suddenly uncertain, I just needed $5, just something to put in my stomach." Of course Avery heard him. Of course the plea tugged at something buried beneath layers of discipline and old pain. But the rules were immovable. Tomb guards did not speak while on duty. They did not break posture, not even for suffering they understood too well. The man misread the quiet again. "Oh, I get it," he snapped, voice cracking more from heartbreak than rage. "You think you're better than me. You think wearing that shiny uniform makes you something special." Heads turned. A woman covered her mouth. A veteran in a Korean War cap stepped closer, frowning. Security began walking over. Avery did not break formation. He could not. But inside, something stirred. A memory sharp as broken glass. A small boy sitting alone on a metal cot in a cold orphanage room. Hands folded tight, stomach empty, no one listening when he whispered, "Please." The homeless man's voice dragged him back. "You soldiers never know what it's like to starve, to be thrown away, to freeze alone in the dark." The words punched through Avery's armor because they weren't wrong, not entirely. He knew exactly what that was like, more than the stranger could ever guess. Still, Avery kept walking, every step a war between duty and empathy. 21 steps, pause, turn. The rhythm was supposed to protect him. Today, it felt like a prison. The homeless man's frustration finally burst into that scream, the one that shattered the morning calm. "I said, back off. I ain't begging you again." Visitors gasped. Security moved faster. But Avery simply stood at the end of his walk, facing the man with a depth of sorrow so profound it stole the stranger's breath, mid-rant. For one suspended second, the fury trembled, confused by unexpected compassion, and that was how the day truly began, with misunderstanding, desperation, and a silence carrying the weight of a man's past. The outburst rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. A pair of tourists stepped back, clutching their jackets. A man with a camera lowered it slowly, uncertain whether to keep filming or delete the footage immediately. Even the school children, who moments earlier had been whispering and pointing, fell perfectly silent. Arlington had a way of making people behave. It demanded reverence without raising its voice. The homeless man, whose name no one yet knew, stumbled away from the rope line, his breath uneven, his hands shaking as if he weren't sure whether to fight, flee, or collapse where he stood. Rage and humiliation churned behind his eyes, creating a storm too large for someone who had nowhere to put it down. Avery completed his turn, boots clicking against the stone. His face remained expressionless, but inside, the memories he tried to bury stirred like restless shadows. He recognized that particular kind of anger, the kind that wasn't born from cruelty, but from desperation, the kind he carried as a boy when he learned the world didn't owe him warmth, food, or kindness. The security officer, Peterson, reached the scene first. He was a stocky man in his 50s, with a gray mustache and the kind of weary patience only decades of dealing with the public could create. He held his palms out, speaking slow and calm. "Sir, I need you to step back. This is a restricted area." The homeless man barked a laugh that cracked down the middle. "Restricted area? Yeah, well, everywhere is restricted when you're like me." His voice wavered, revealing sadness underneath, like raw nerve beneath scraped skin. "I wasn't hurting nobody. I just asked him for $1. $1. Peterson glanced at Avery, who did not move, could not move. The guard had no authority to respond verbally or physically. On-duty tomb guards were bound by tradition older than any living soldier. "I get that you're having a rough morning," said Peterson, "but you can't raise your voice here." "Rough morning?" The man spread his arms, nearly losing balance. "Buddy, this ain't a